We need to reassess our position as a neutral country and must prioritise spending on our defence and security forces now that the financial crisis is over. That's the message from a landmark paper published today on Ireland's defence strategy, which also outlines proposals to combat cybercrime and terrorism. It's been drawn up by the 4 Fine Gael MEPs, including Brian Hayes, who is a MEP for Dublin. He's with me in studio, as also is Roger Cole, chairperson of the Irish Peace and Neutrality Alliance. Good morning to you both. Thank you for coming in. Brian Hayes, you cover a lot in this document, but a complete overhaul of our security forces and our position as a neutral country. I mean, where are you heading with this?
Well, I think my colleagues and I, Deirdre Clune, Mairead, McGuinness and Sean Kelly, are trying to reflect in a document that I think most people will read is quite balanced. The debate that's currently going on in Brussels right now, and there is a huge concentration on the questions of security and defence because of the threats that Europe faces. Terrorism, radical terrorism, cybersecurity, and all of the other new threats that are there. Those threats emerge and change every 4 or 5 years. And what we're trying to do in this document is really have a public conversation as to the best way forward for Ireland, given the fact that the threats that face Europe are equally the threats that face us right now.
So what sacred cows do you think should be up for shooting?
Well, I think we should look at the question of Irish neutrality. I mean, a lot of people understand what it means. A lot of people do not understand what it means. I think probably a better way of describing it could be non-aligned or non-nuclear non-aligned. But I mean, we have seen incremental progress in this area under the European Union in recent years, from the common security and defence policy right the way through now to PESCO. There is a debate taking place in Brussels, and I think we've got to be very frank with people. We face threats in this country. I mean, I think it's accepted by people that we don't spend enough in terms of our own security, in terms of our own defence forces. We do need to spend more, but we also need to do it in a way which helps our colleagues in the European Union, because not only have the rights as European citizens, we also have responsibilities to work with others in what is a very important international stage for us.
Roger Cole, among the ideas that they look at, they stop short of supporting the creation of an EU army, but there is a proposal in this to work much more closely with our EU partners in defence matters.
Well, that's an issue that can be debated, and it's great to have a debate on it. But as far as we're concerned, Irish neutrality is our best defence.
You better expand on that.
Well, we are a small country. We fought a national war of independence against the British Union, and it was the will of the Irish people to have an independent state. And the first person to advocate neutrality was Wolfe Tone way back in 1790. So it's not a recent concept. It's very deeply rooted in our history. And it's linked with our desire to be an independent Irish republic.
But so, I mean, as members of the European Union, we've I feel like traded a part of our sovereignty and our I suppose for economic and other benefits, and maybe defending the European Union to which we belong means that the old concept of neutrality is somewhat outdated.
Well, when we joined the European Union first, it was understood to be what's called a common market, a trade agreement between individual states. And the white paper that was introduced at the time we joined what was then the common market, it said that our neutrality wouldn't be affected. So I think the European Union should be a trade agreement between sovereign states.
Yeah, but that's 40 years ago, Roger,
Yeah.
Yes.
45.
Yes, I can do my maths as well. But nevertheless, the reality is I think that the Irish people want, and I think you'll discover that quite a lot of ordinary people in France and in Germany and in Italy and other countries want a partnership of sovereign states for the purpose of trade.
I think, I mean, that was certainly the view of the European Union at the time, and Roger's right about that, and he's right to point that out. But a lot has happened since then. I mean, the competencies of the European Union have grown since then. Our central argument in this paper is that we should be around the table. We shouldn't hive off responsibility to France or Germany or other big states to devise this. If we're around the table, we can devise our own requirements, our own traditions that Roger spoke about in the context of the European Union. We have other neutral countries, members of the European Union, who are part of PESCO like we are. And the question...
Just remind people what PESCO is.
PESCO is this new system that's been developed where on a project-wide basis, countries can opt in and opt out. There are 17 projects currently, and we have opted into 2 of them. Only Minister Keogh did that last week. The Dáil recently put that through. The Dáil and the government put that through our Oireachtas. It's something we welcome. The question now is, are we going to see a defence union? I don't believe, Sean, there's any support in the European Union for a common European army, as you say. I don't believe that there is any support for that kind of process.
But one thing that, and this is something that people were given all manner of assurances about, yes, particularly in the consequence of the Nice Treaty debates, correct, that they would have the so-called triple lock before Irish troops would be deployed abroad, that it would require a government decision, a Dáil vote, and also UN authorisation. Now, you want to unpick that?
We certainly are proposing some changes to it. It is not right that China or Russia can oppose a UN Security Council resolution and we can't then commit troops where we would want to commit troops. For instance, the Macedonia case in 2003, we wanted to help in that regard. We couldn't do it because of the politics in the UN. So what we're saying in the document is, let's amend the triple lock to say the EU and the EU and our UN resolution, or alternatively, in a circumstance where there's high politics going on in the UN and there isn't going to be a resolution, why would we not have a situation where maybe a larger majority of the Dáil could commit troops on that basis?
Maybe 2/3, you think, you suggest?
Exactly. I mean, why should China or Russia define Irish policy when it comes to the committing of our defence forces to other parts of the world to help in other parts of the world?
Well, one of our greatest ministers of foreign affairs was Frank Aiken. And Frank Aiken spent a great deal of time in the United Nations because he saw the United Nations as the global institution committed to global security, as the main institution through which Ireland should pursue its foreign policy. And indeed, the greatest achievement of this state was the Non-Proliferation Treaty that was advocated and promoted by Frank Aiken. As far as we're concerned, that's a tradition that we support. That's a value that we support. We are and believe Ireland should be a sovereign, independent, democratic Irish state with its own independent foreign policy pursued primarily through the United Nations.
But that's not happened, Roger. In the circumstance where I described in Macedonia, where we did want to commit troops there, that we were prevented from doing it because of political manoeuvres going on in the UN. And I think in the same way, I mean, the only part of the triple lock that prevents us from doing something absolutely is the failure on a UN resolution. So an amending of the triple lock could help us to have greater sovereignty when it comes to making our own decisions, and I think our hands are tied in that area. But I mean,
okay, there's a minority government at the moment, Roger Cole, but in a situation where there's a majority one again, this would be quite an impediment if they had to get a 2/3 majority in Dáil Éireann, wouldn't it? I mean, it would be quite reassuring.
Either you want to support the United Nations or you don't. I mean, you can seek to reform the United Nations as we would.
But I mean, like, sorry, that's one of these things. The veto is there.
Yes, but the point is, do you want to go to war? Is that it? Is the concept of going to war without other countries like the United States of America and Britain went to war without the consent of the United Nations? They went to war with Iraq, and we helped to organise a larger demonstration against the war in Iraq. In 2003, well over 100,000 people turned out. And the reality, no, hang on, let me finish. The reality is that you start going outside the general framework of the UN or interpreting its resolutions differently. You see, you know that the clock. There's a science that's come together and have this one. They produce what I call a nuclear clock. In other words, how close we are to a nuclear war. They've just moved that now to 2 minutes. To midnight.
You wouldn't move it back to 3 or 4 minutes after what happened last night, no?
Unfortunately, I have no power over moving clocks. But these people are scientists and they look into the reality of nuclear war. Now, in this situation where we are, according to them, getting closer to a nuclear war where we will all die, trying to operate and change the rules of the United Nations is not a good idea.
Just to pick up on Roger's point, this isn't about going to war. It's about our decision as a sovereign country to commit troops in a circumstance of peacekeeping, humanitarian relief, the Petersburg tasks. And that's what we're good at. We have a defence force in this country that people should be proud about because their footprint internationally is Ireland's footprint.
As a matter of interest, would this require the implementation of this policy? Would it require a referendum and as part of a new EU treaty?
I don't believe that even the discussion on a European defence union potential is going to lead to a European army. Were it to change in terms of a proposal on mutual defence clause, we've said in the document we should look at that on its merits. We're not taking some doctrinaire position against that. If that is the outcome of the European Union defence position. Having said that, what we said in the document, were we to change that, it would require a referendum, and we're upfront and straight about that. But can I make the point? This isn't about army against army. This isn't about going to war. It's about solidarity with our European Union colleagues, and it's also about making sure that our army are given the best opportunities in the world. Our defence forces are something we should be proud of,
would you
and they deserve the best.
That an increase of 500, as is proposed in this Fine Gael document, Roger Cole, in the strength of the defence forces is warranted?
Well, the army is about 9,500 strong. And I think it's 9,000 at the moment.
It's 9,1, yeah.
9,1. So, I mean, going up to 9,500, I wouldn't have a big major problem with that, because that's the general remit of the size of the army, somewhere between 9,000 and 900. Problem is, of course, a lot of the ordinary soldiers are badly paid.
And we need to address that issue.
I think if we're going to have well-paid soldiers, that's absolute priority.
Okay, lots of texts. Cavan Man says that's a very dangerous road that Hayes wants to go down. Once you give up neutrality, you can never get it back. Another one, when politicians' children and bankers' children are the first to be called up when the fighting starts, then we'll see. That from Pat on a tweet. And then, for heaven's sake, I can't believe what I'm hearing. We need a world beyond war, not for war. Neutrality in Ireland has been violated all along with US military using Shannon. This man is talking anti-Russia, anti-China propaganda, says Louise. Look, we leave it there. Brian Hayes and Roger Cole, thank you both for coming in.